Hi, everyone. I'm back after several months of taking a break from going through my book because of personal life changes like moving and a new grandbaby. A lot of things were put on hold, but now I'm back and I'm going to start in this video. I'm going to start through for chapters 8 through 12, and it's probably going to be 2 videos. We'll see how it goes. And then I'm actually going to go back and do a separate video just on chapter 7, because chapter 7 alone deserves its own video. And for those of you who are just jumping in and you're like, what's she talking about? I'm Michelle Seidler. I am the author of Psychic to Profit. And at this part of the book, the title is Overcoming Mistreatment. And I'm going to be specifically talking about the mistreatment that I received at my time at IHOP. And the purpose of this video isn't to just expose or bash anyone. My heart in doing this is actually to bring people through my process of how I actually overcame it, how I came to a place where my heart was and is completely free, and I have nothing but gratitude for the things that I went through. Backing up a little bit, I moved to Kansas City to be a part of IHOP in 2004, the end of 2004, and I began an internship. I forgot what they called it back then, in January 2005, and I was in the community approximately 10 years. And I very quickly, when I got there, ended up just naturally in the prophetic department. And after a very little bit of time, I became a leader in the department, the prophetic department at IHOP. I started a training program and essentially doubled the amount of prophecy rooms that we had. I taught, I trained, and I built teams. And I did that for several years. And so I'm going to be talking about specifically some of the things that I went through during that time, which, looking back, there were, gosh, I mean, there was one point in my life where I really thought, okay, this is because I'm a female. And I think there was some of that. IHOP did go through a period of where they were actually confronted, not even just once, more than once, about the male dominant culture and the lack of women. And really, when I was in the prophetic department at that time, I think there was one other female that led a team in there, and the rest were all males. And so, and again, I wasn't just leading a team. I created a training, a training arm in the prophetic department, and was building and creating and even overseeing administratively the whole department for a season. And so, there were some things that I experienced that I kind of, first, you always think in those kind of situations, or I did, that it's just me, like what is it with me? Because there were so many times where I saw things happening, and I would bring them up. I saw people, let me just put it this way. I saw injustice. I saw other people not being treated correctly. And I just saw the way that some things were being handled or done. And I was kind of, it was strange because I had real favor, but at the same time, it was kind of like, I was kind of known like starting trouble essentially, and not keeping my mouth shut. And it's kind of like, just sit down and be quiet and do your thing. And really that was a big part of what I did. But that's not what I'm going to get into. Just, I said that to say at the time I thought, well, maybe it is me. And, of course, this was just a very long time ago. I think when I moved into a leadership role at IHOP, it may have been 2006. And so here we are, 2024. So this is a long time ago. And, so anyway, I'm going to start, like I said, in chapter 8, and I'm going to go through a period of time that really covers chapter 8 through, like I said, we'll see how far I get, but really 8 to 12. And there were several things that actually happened during that time, which would have been the years 2000. To the end of 2008 to until 2010. It was about a 2-year period, give or take, probably a little bit more than that, just to give you a time frame, time reference in that. And so I had come to a point in, and I don't really want to get too deep into my heart process with the Lord at the time. That is in the book, and that's really what I highlight in the book. So I really, when I wrote the book, I really, when it came to the IHOP stuff, I had my heart before the Lord and wanted to communicate it in a way that it was healthy and not bashing IHOP in any way. And it was, I really cried a lot before the Lord in writing the book that it was pure, but it was truthful. And so I didn't feel at the time to go deep into the mistreatment, though I did talk about it, and I did talk about my process a little bit, which was profound for me. I always say, like, the way we go through things, the way we process things, is so important. That part is so important in seeing things as difficult things, seeing them as opportunities versus staying in the pain. And there's a time for grieving, and but what do you do with that after the grieving, or even going through it? And and I say this to people all the time. I think, had I not, by the grace of God, I walked through it the way I did, but had I not walked through that, I don't think the Lord would have, I shouldn't say the Lord, I just don't think the door for me would have opened up the way that it did into ministering into a nation and calling me into the nation of Ukraine. I really believe that. I really believe that my process through this did something in me that, David says, in the presence of my enemies, you anoint my head with oil. And I really learned that. I learned that in the presence of mistreatment, how we respond and how we hold our heart is actually a place where it can be an invitation into encounter and anoint and being further anointed. And I can say that because that's exactly what happened to me. And so all that to say, it's I really do not want to come across as just bashing IHOP, though this process for me has been long. Of course, I've done other videos and I've said other things on social media where people know that I knew about a lot of things that were going on years before it happened. And behind the scenes, I was really going to leaders, major fathers in the charismatic movement, and got nothing. Where I saw things pushed under the rug. We're going to handle it. We'll handle it. Or there was a slap on the hand, and so when things were coming to a head, I knew that they were, and I knew that the things that they were going to say were essentially the truth. So, a lot of people that, these things they were exposed to them. It was fresh and it was new for me. I had already been going through several years of just weeping and crying and going through, the process of some of the things, not only that I encountered, but then that I saw afterwards. And some things that I personally, experienced. So jumping into chapter 8, at this season in my life, again, this was around 2000, end of 2008 into 2009, I had really come to a point where the Lord was really, it was like he was doing something in my heart in regards to who my allegiance is to, and what I'm connected to and who I trust. Meaning, here I was, at IHOP, and IHOP at that time was really exploding even more. I was a beloved daughter there, really. I had favor, and I was fruitful. I loved actually where I was. I loved my community. And one day he invites me to leave. And I knew that it was about just disconnecting, not about disconnecting from IHOP, but just being connected to him. And I'll get into that more. And so I knew it was him. I knew it was his voice. And this is the journey that I have been on and had been on. It was about surrender. It was about letting go. It was about not being attached to anything. And I know that's offensive to some people, but that's the journey that he had me on. It was about being my only thing. And so I went to my leaders and I said, here's what I'm feeling. And I felt like the Lord was actually calling me to Africa for a season, and then Israel. And what he said to me was, when you go, I want you to go. And when you go, I want you to leave everything. I want you to lay it all down. And that meant coming off staff. That meant laying down my position. That meant, at the time I was running several prophetic rooms. I had several assistants at the time. And I felt like he was saying, give everything over to your assistants and leave it, let it go. And so when I went to my leaders with that, they were pretty much astounded, and a few of them actually had different conversations, and a few of them said to me, okay, we'll bless you to go, but don't leave your, and this was my test from the Lord. Essentially it was, had I not done this, I don't know where it would have led me. But, they said to me, okay, go, but don't give up your position. Put your assistants in place and, go do what you need to do and then come back. And what a temptation that was, because they were saying to me, do you know, the backing that you have with IHOP? And it was kind of like this feeling of, my confidence or my anointing or the doors opening for me or whatever I do is connected to IHOP. And I knew that's what the Lord was disconnecting me from, that it's not about being connected to a ministry, it's about me. And that was really tough for me because it was really, pushed on me to not give up my position. And but I did. And it was to sell everything, get rid of it was everything. Let go of everything. And I did that. And I left, went to Africa. It was I would say maybe 5 months, 6 months into it. I had, and I'm not going to get deep into this because I don't want this isn't the point of this video, but I actually had a car accident in Africa, and I go through several things. I had a head injury, several things happened over the next several months that you can read about in the book. And some of the leaders at IHOP were saying to me, actually, I'm sorry. So I left Africa. I had a car accident, left Africa, and went back to Florida. I had at the time the leader of a house of prayer in Orlando had been asking me to move back, to come back, and to build their prophetic department. And so I said yes, and I did that with a head injury. And I had recovered somewhat, but I just didn't have a lot of wisdom, then at the time. I just kept going. And I talk about things that happened in the book. And so it got so bad. I did build the prophetic department there. I trained up leaders, and but I was still my health and my head and things were just getting worse. And so some of the leaders at IHOP said, come back. And at that time, the awakening had started. That was 2009. And and so I did. They were like, come home. And I did. And a lot of people, well, I'm not even going to get into that right now. I talk about it in the book because there's a lot of people view that in a lot of different ways, why that happened to me, and but again, you can read about that in the book. And so I packed up, drove back to Kansas City. My daughter and I, who at the time was, no, I'm sorry, my daughter wasn't with me that time. It was just me. My daughter was still in Kansas City. And my gosh, I'm driving back to Kansas City, and I actually had to stop. I can't remember the city. This is how bad it was. Man, I don't remember the city, but I actually had to go into an emergency room because of some things that were happening with my head and having head injury. That's how bad it was. But I was just like, I got to get back, and I got back and stayed with the family. They had a separate kind of suite area, and I did nothing. I was just taking care of my body, taking care of my health, and the awakening was going on at the time. So I just, was attending that. And I'll tell this part, but I had a dream one night. I was probably there a month. And I had a dream one night that I was laying hands on somebody, and I had a word of knowledge for them. And so I laid my hands on them, and I was looking forward, and they were like to my right. And so I went to lay my hands on them, and I spoke a word of knowledge about healing. And I turned my head and looked, and it was actually me. I was praying for myself and gave myself a word of knowledge. And I woke up and I was completely healed. It was amazing. And I was just so grateful, completely healed. And so at that time, one of the leaders in the prophetic department were encouraging me to come back. And I really wrestled with that because I felt like, the Lord had told me go, and there was never like like come back into the prophetic department. Um, and I didn't make a lot of good decisions then. I was just in a really weird, hard place. And so he persisted with me for a while, come back, come back. And I thought, okay, well, what else am I going to do? You know? And I had gotten healed, and really, I would say this was probably, I was there maybe 5 months just resting, before this happened. And so, I said, okay, I'll walk this out a little bit and see how I feel. So I said yes to him. And at that time, when they had put a different man in charge of the prophetic department while I was gone, who did not know me. And so this leader that was asking me to come back said, I want you to, meet with him and, have a conversation about all of it and see, how he wants to handle things. And, so I did. Man, I had this conversation with him, and I was talking to him, and again, he did not know me. I had never met him. He had come to IHOP, and I guess he was a leader somewhere else in another country, Australia, I think. And he was just, put in position of running things in the department. And he actually said to me, he's told me I had a demon. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I'm like, I'm not here because this is something I'm seeking out. I'm here because one of the leaders is asking me to come back. I don't know you, and I'm sitting here having this conversation with me, and you're discerning that I have a demon. And he said, we want you to go through the deliverance ministry before you come back. And I was like, the deliverance ministry that I helped establish, several years before, I worked with, Stephen Beauchamp, with that at the very beginning. So, and whatever. And so, yeah, I was humbling myself. I said, okay, here I was in this very vulnerable, raw place, you guys. I mean, I had went through so much. I had gotten my butt kicked. I had nothing but warfare for, over a year. And I was so vulnerable. And at that time, I think I needed my family to come around me and support me, and again, going back in the department was not something that I was even doing. I was kind of just submitting myself, trusting my fathers who that I loved and believed that they loved me, and it's what I needed. I needed that support at the time. And so even when this man that I didn't know said, you have a demon, you need to go through deliverance ministry, I thought, okay, I'm going to submit to him. I don't know him. He doesn't know me, but maybe I do have a demon. Who knows? I just went through hell and back several times, And so, he goes, go talk to Stephen. And so, of course, I knew Stephen Beauchamp, who ran the deliverance ministry. And I went to him and I said, this man told me that I needed to come to you and get a demon cast out of me. And Stephen laughed. He said, you don't have a demon. And if he thinks that you have a demon, tell him to cast it out of you. God, you guys, I laugh now, but this was just like so intense. So I go back to him and I said, Stephen says I don't have a demon. And I really, listen, I wasn't being sarcastic at the time. I was really humbling myself, and I was like, he told me I don't have a demon, but he said, if I do, you cast it out of me. And so what this did was this brought, he stirred it up even more and brought in other leaders into the first thing I can remember is being in a meeting with several leaders, and I couldn't believe it, you guys. I felt so betrayed is the best word. Because these were my fathers, and here was this man in this meeting saying he discerns a demon in me, and we need to deal with this. We need to deal with this. And I just was like, I want out, like this is BS. But then again, I was like, well, here we are with my fathers, and you know, I'm safe. And they in this board meeting, not a board meeting, in this meeting, it was a board room table. None of them stood up for me. None of them said anything. I can't even, I don't even have words for how I was attacked, accused. And I kept saying, like, what have I done? Like, I don't understand. Like there was this betrayal, and I didn't understand where it was coming from. Honestly, there was nothing that I did. And I kept saying, where are you getting this from? Like, what exactly have I done? What have I done? And he's like, I just discerned there's a demon. And then he brought up, along with one other person, that how I was always speaking up. And, in the past, even though he didn't know me, that it was essentially because I started trouble. And the trouble I started was always about speaking up for other people that were being mistreated. And so I was just so confused. I was so confused why none of my fathers stood up for me with this man who didn't know me. I didn't do anything. And I was like, what do you want me to do? I went to the leader of the deliverance department. He said, I don't have a demon. Listen, if I have a demon, freaking cast it out of me already. Like it was horrible. What it did to my heart. I mean, if anyone's experienced any of that kind of betrayal before, where here you are in this meeting with about, I don't know, 6, 7, leaders, and all of this stuff, just these conversations going on where I'm going, what have I done? What have I done? And this other guy, he's just like running it all, So we get out of that, and I'm devastated. Here I went from just this intense warfare to come home only to, just add even more trouble, add even more pain to what I had already been experiencing. I didn't come home to a safe place at all. As a matter of fact, it was the complete opposite. And what made matters worse is, right after that, some of those same men that I considered fathers came to me and said, we know you don't have a demon. We love you. We know that you don't have a demon. And I was like, I said to one of them, I said, why didn't you stand up for me? And he's like, well, we're just wanting to honor him because he's the one over the prophetic department. And which just further devastated me. I had already, well, I won't get into that. And so I actually ended up just completely stepping away. It was just like another war zone for me. I will say, this guy at the time who was accusing me, several months later, had many women coming to leaders expressing mistreatment from him. and apparently he had an issue with women. And so they actually had to ask him to leave. They asked him to step down from his position, and he had to go back to his country. And because of some of the things that he had done and said and treated other women. But and then I look back and I go, okay, clearly this is what was happening to me, and nobody acknowledged it, nobody did anything about it, nobody apologized. It was just like in back rooms and in secret. Just a few of them were like, we know you're okay. It really was. And this is something that I've seen over and over and over, not just at that time, but just through years of seeing things in ministries and being in leadership. I see people men, essentially, because that's mostly who they are, who love their positions more than standing up for righteousness and truth. And it's self-preservation. They don't want to start trouble because they don't want to lose what they have. And even this stuff that was exposed, at IHOP last year, 2023, the reason all of these things stayed like they did, and even the other thing that I brought up with Bob Hartley that I knew about for years and went to leaders, the major leaders in the charismatic movement. And I saw that. We don't want trouble with our ministry. We don't need the trouble. Let someone else deal with it. Let someone else deal with it, or a slap on the hand. And it's this, again, it's this self-preservation, and covering things up and letting things go. I mean, that is such an issue of in the body of Christ amongst leaders that I have seen over and over and over again. That it's not about caring for the sheep or what's happening to the sheep. I'm not saying people don't care. I'm just saying, because I knew that my fathers at that time, that they were disturbed by it, and they did care because they told me so behind the scenes. But there was no standing up for me. There was no guarding me. There was no protecting me. There was no, standing up for who I am and my character, which they praised, at the time. And so, and why? Because they didn't want to make trouble, and they didn't want to lose their position, and so I stepped away from that, and again went into months of just grieving and healing from that, which I went into just being in another ministry that was in the area and not doing anything, just sitting, and again letting the Lord minister to me. After probably about I don't know, 5 months, something like that, I started to really get stirred by the Lord to start something. And so actually, I think what I'm going to do, even though like the next round of mistreatment that I got from IHOP was way more severe, because, and I'll get into that, but I think I'm going to do it in another video. I've went pretty long on this one. I want to say, even at that time, when these things were going on at IHOP, with me, it was just in the leadership. It wasn't like other people knew in the community about it, but I was known in the community, and I had a good reputation. I was respected. I was loved, and there's a reason I'm saying that, because of what happened next that I'm going to do on the next video. Um, but let me end with this, and I'll pick up in the next video with what happened next. But I want to say this, something really important. After that happened, um, during that time when I just kind of stepped away and was just letting the Lord minister to me, He really did heal my heart. Um, I didn't have any bitterness. I didn't have any anger. He really just kind of washed that all out of me. And I knew he was comforting me with, like, there's new things coming, and don't, and this was a big thing, don't try to get your own justice. Give it to me. Leave it to me. That was a really big part of this because it was a major injustice. I could not even comprehend it. I still, it's one of those things. And if you've ever been through something like that, where it's just purely spiritual, and because there was no rhyme or reason for it. But man, going through that definitely rooted and grounded me even more into the heart of God, because where else was I going to go? When you're in situations like that, either you get bitter and you walk away and you're angry and you're bitter, or you move more into Him. And by His grace, that's what I did. I went deep into Him, and I really did have no bitterness, no anger towards them, and I really did let it go. I was able to surrender and let that situation go, and just be raw before the Lord and with whatever He wanted to do with me. And so I'm going to end with that, and you guys stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss the next one, because the process that I went through is so really, really important. And that was what I wanted to do on this video, but I did want to give a back context of some things. And so the next one, the way I kind of got from the leaders again, in a way that was just another wave of just being completely astounded, and me walking through that, and the way I walked through that. Please don't miss that, because it is something that He brought me through, and I've actually taught this to people for 10, 11 years. This actual process that I went through, that not only healed me, but brought me into a greater place of anointing. And so don't miss that. That's the next video. And so until then, thanks for listening, guys. And listen, if you have not watched the other videos for the first part of my book, they're on YouTube. Go back, check them out. It's Psychic to Profit. I've done chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. And it'll give you even a greater context of this story. So I will see you soon. Bless you guys.